Here's a myth that keeps a lot of brilliant people confusing their audience into silence. Your story is what happened to you. That's a clean assumption, but it's the wrong edit because what happened is not automatically a story. It's a pile of events, a resume in a costume, or a documentary nobody asked to watch uncut. The real story is the meaning you pull from the mess. It's the moment someone hears you and thinks, oh, that's me, or that's what I'm afraid of, or that's the thing I haven't been able to name. And of course, in a world drowning in content, AI summaries, sales webinars, pitch decks, and personal brands wearing matching linen sets on LinkedIn, story may actually be the last trust engine we still know how to feel. Welcome back to Is Anything Real, the reality first leadership show where we test advice, publish the receipts, and ship what actually works under pressure. I'm Adam W. Barney, transition leadership coach, author of Make Your Own Glass Half Full, and builder of EnergyOS, where I help leaders rebuild their operating system when the tools that got them here stop working. Today's guest is Kyle Gray, founder of the Story Engine. Kyle helps experienced experts, coaches, consultants, and speakers turn complex knowledge into clear, sales-driving stories for webinars, stages, and conversations that actually move people. And this one is a pod swap in the truest sense. I'm joining Kyle's show where he's going to take my very nonlinear story, corporate marketing, 100 million plus in paid ad spend, layoffs, ALS, Canavan disease, my book, daughters, coaching, and all the chaos there, and distill it into a 3 to 5 minute narrative. And then Kyle is here today so we can ask the deeper question, what makes a real story? Kyle, welcome to Is Anything Real?
Adam, thank you so much. There was such a unique essence of almost like an iHeartRadio or like a non-live recorded podcast to your introduction. I feel like I'm on a professional like NPR radio show. So that's like a unique experience, and I have to give you a hat tip to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the opening there.
Well, and I knew this would be fun, Kyle, when you described your process as basically helping experts experience their own story from outside themselves. And that's either storytelling, maybe it's part therapy, or it's actually legal witchcraft. It could be all three at once. But let's start there. Why do smart experts struggle so badly to tell simple stories?
Well, I think you actually, in your brilliant introduction, illustrated one of the biggest problems. Is you had a laundry list of, I was in marketing, I have these things, I have kids, ups and downs. There's so many things in my life. And I get this very, very often. And a lot of people there, first of all, there's a lot of things to choose from. And there's a lot of emotions around a lot of things to choose from. And those emotions, we assigned to those things many years ago. And they have mostly stayed the same.
Right.
And so when it comes to like searching our own mind for things, it's like there's so many, like this story's 92% good, this story's 95% good, this one's 97% good. And it's like they all feel so important.
Yep.
And so I either have to like talk for so long and just like share what I feel is important. And sometimes it feels good for me, but that usually means I go 20 minutes over the amount of time that I was trying to talk. And people will often, in the middle of me telling a story, say that they need to go to the bathroom and not come back. But I thought I was giving my best stuff away. I felt great when I was talking, but they, people end up having to pee for some reason.
We're humans.
Yeah. Or so that's one extreme of it. And then the other extreme of this problem is like, I don't have any stories to tell. I'm a really boring person. And either way, the expression is actually, I don't know how to tell stories, or I don't know what stories are available to tell. And when we learn that there are different stories that serve different purposes, then when we can start to practice in those frameworks, it allows us to make decisions about things that we've never really had a lens or a process to make decisions about these before, because all stories are just stories. And a story, I don't even know what it's for. It's like something funny to tell to entertain my friends, or like where we know stories are important, but we just kind of had this natural understanding of their existence, and they impact us, but we don't really, we just know that they do without knowing how. And so by simply creating frameworks and structures that allow us to start understanding the purpose of things, first of all, it allows us to take a new lens to our own life and find stories and moments that we might have previously found or labeled as not a good story, or a story that proves that I am not a valuable person, or definitely not a story that I would want to share from stage. Right. I've had a lot of those before in my own life.
Yeah.
But when we can start to see like, oh, there's formulas and frameworks for using this story to reach ideal clients who aren't feeling seen, who need this, then some of these moments we might actually become excited to share things. We might actually find that moments that for a long time we thought were things we weren't proud of, we can actually be proud of those things.
Right.
And so simple frameworks allow us to access our past and also start to listen to people. When you start to understand different frameworks of stories, instead of constantly like standing in front of somebody and being like, what should I tell them next to prove to them that I'm an expert?
Where's the personality, right?
Yeah, we start listening. Like, what is this person's problems? What are they saying? Like, who do I know that's just like them that I could tell them about? What limiting beliefs are they bringing to me right now that I could actually be of service to this person?
Well, and you said I've heard you say something that I really love, and it's when you ask someone directly, what story do you want to tell? But the brain often doesn't give you the best story. It gives you polished, obvious, maybe overused ones. But I love how your process, Kyle, goes a different way. You ask about clients, you get them into the feeling, and you ask when they felt something similar. And that's fascinating because it gets people out of performance and into recognition. And that changes everything. What does the body sometimes remember the real story, or why does the body sometimes remember the real story before the brain does?
That's a great question. And yeah, you're pointing out there's two different kind of unique processes happening at the same time. And the first is experiential. Is I like to ask people where they're went through experiencing of words. I like to ask people like, what's your ideal client's problems? Okay, so then they'll tell us their problems, and they usually have good answers. And then I'll ask a level deeper. What would somebody with those problems say over at a coffee table with their friend? They don't know you, and they're not smart like you. They don't know what Facebook ads are. So how would they express their problem? Or they don't know what peptides are, or whatever. And then we go a little bit further. Like, what would somebody at 3 a.m, they're calling you, they're in a panic, they're admitting things they've never admitted to anybody else. What are they saying about this problem? And not just the problem that you're solving, but like the implications of what it all happens in their business. And we get into it, and that's usually some intense stuff, right? And so if we like engage in this, there's an energetics and there's a physicality to these words. And if we actually start to read them out loud, we feel them in our bodies. And so I'll read them out loud, or I'll read it out loud with my client, or help them do it. And I'll ask them, where in your body do you feel this? And then you can say, when else in my life have I felt like this? Because the brain, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but this is really easy to experience in a smell. Like if you experience a scented candle that you haven't smelled since, your mom had this scented candle, and it like awakens memories. That's the same thing. Emotions do that same thing. They're just like a smell. And we can't search our brain like, we can't search our mind for stories and like just have a complete universal, we remember everything perfectly. It's unfortunate,
Right.
but we can't. And additionally, like, how we search our brain, usually when somebody like wants to write a talk, even if they don't admit they're searching this way, they're searching, what story do I tell to make myself look like an authority? And Google is not going to search for
Yep.
the thing that comes up when we are having this feeling talking about this dark 3 a.m. moment.
Right.
But like, and usually the person's first response is, well, I definitely don't want to tell this story that's just come up. But it gives us an opportunity to work within it.
Right. Well, and I love how you've also said that in your process around, say, the 30-minute mark, you actually take everything you've heard and tell the person their own story back to them as if you are them. And that's a wild mirror. And I know the goal, obviously, Kyle, is not just for it to sound accurate. It's for them to feel what their audience should feel. What do you think happens when an expert hears their story from the outside?
Absolutely. Well, again, one element that we went through, we like talked about it being experiential. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs and founders and leaders who are super duper busy. Their minds are super duper taxed. They're distracted. They have to run a growing business. And now they also have to be a part-time AI genius just to stay relevant.
Yep.
So like that takes a lot of time. Then it's difficult to like fill in more intellectual things. And really, like, they come to me because they're overtaxed intellectually. So moving through this experiential and having something that you can feel allows these ideas to hit you differently and like infuse differently. If I gave you the perfect script, somebody wouldn't read it. But if you can feel it and know it and experience it and smell it, like we kind of described before, then you can remember it more quickly. So that's the gift of reading their story back is it's such a burden being yourself. And you have so many judgments of yourself and you have so many editing and there's so many like voices shaking all of the time, and being able to relieve somebody of their own perspectives on their story and just drive through that allows somebody to be seen in a way that they've never experienced before.
Right.
And so this is a really powerful process, and it's kind of a dangerous process for me as a podcast host. I want to show them this and it's a great blessing and it feels really good. But I also like want this to be like, this is the, like, you can do this too. You can't do this yet. But the idea of this show is to show you that there's a repeatable process and a formula that you can practice to create these kind of things. And that's what I want to show people is like the people that work with me, they're able to do this with their own stories at any moment, at any time. And that's the promise and the offer that I give for people. And it's not just about telling a story to open up a talk. It's about telling a stories about your clients that you've worked with before to overcome your audience's biggest objections before they happen, about your clients being successful in ways that you couldn't have imagined before, and like allowing the audience to see their possibilities. There's a great deal that goes into this, but I think one of the biggest shifts is really like infusing everything in your talk from not being, trying not to be, how do I prove myself as an authority, to really, how do I serve this person? And all of the frameworks really help make that shift. And even we've seen it in like, we find the client's language and then move into our own body to find the right story, but it's in service to them. And when we reorient all of our talk around that same idea, magic results happen.
Yeah. Well, and that weaves, I think, into this idea of non-linearity, right? It's one of my favorite things in the world, but you know, a great story doesn't need it doesn't need to include everything. It just needs enough for the truth to land and for people to feel it, right? You know, my story, 20 years in corporate marketing, global agencies, VC-backed startups, Fortune 500 clients, 100 million plus in ad spend. leaving corporate in 2021, losing my mom to bulbar onset ALS, getting involved in ALS research, close friend's child diagnosed with Canavan, my father's hydrocephalus, building a coaching practice. I could go on and on and on. And that's not a neat 3-act structure from the inside. It's a junk drawer with meaning inside of it, right? And I love how that process helps to find that through line when life and business is nonlinear.
Yeah.
What do nonlinear stories reveal that polished success stories hide?
I'll express that through nonlinear stories are learning how to interface with your stories. Like you said, there are so many things and so many important things. And again, like we've assigned a lot of labels to those stories, and those end up impacting us more than just when we speak or what stories we decide to tell. But those labels have a consistent impact. And I will tell you about one of my clients, JR, and the impact of like these kind of stories can have. He was going through my mastermind last year, and I can remember at our first retreat, he did an opening story like the one we're about to create. And he talks about coming home and kneeling in front of his daughter in a really tense moment. He had just gotten in a fight with his wife about traveling, being away so much for work, working too hard, having no availability for them. And he goes and he kneels in front of his daughter and he says, "Livy, are you afraid of me?" And she says, "Yes, especially when you and mommy fight." And he's like kneeling down in front of a group of us telling us this story in this moment, and we can like feel a pin drop in the room. And this was like, he begins telling this story. He's running a high-end biohacking clinic in Miami.
Yeah.
But his family lives in Minnesota. So at this time, he's actually traveling 3 weeks out of the month to be in Miami and grow this biohacking clinic. And he starts sharing this story. He's moving some doctors to tears, and they're coming to him and things are working. But at the same time, it becomes increasingly obvious that him working in this clinic is living the same problem that he was in the story, because he's overworking himself. He's causing the same family problems. And there's a great cognitive dissonance that happens when you're telling a story about this and then you're living it still.
Yeah.
And so JR's life began to change. Instead of like working double full time at this clinic, he started finding ways to being like, well, maybe I can work for the nonprofits here, or maybe I can do this too. I don't know if I'm going to fit here. Maybe I can become a fractional, for several other companies. And over the course of 6 months, had to make a really difficult transition away from overperforming like he had been doing for many years and providing. And I remember him telling me, like, not 6 months after this, that because of he had 3 fractional things after leaving the clinic, 3 months later was making more than he was in the clinic, but he was able to stay home and coach his kids hockey, and gave the same talk and the same thing that we had developed with the story, and made like $130,000 for one of his companies.
Wow.
And so the point of that is that like learning and practicing and engaging in these stories like is crafting your identity and your vision and putting it into effect in ways. And it will allow you to be in more alignment with your life.
I mean, that's a great example of how, Kyle, I would say clean stories impressed, but those honest stories truly deeply connect. Kyle, at this point, I kind of want to move this into a move that listeners could run this week. And I want to call it the story signal reset. And I view this, Kyle, as something for anyone trying to explain what they do, sell what they do, or stop turning their expertise into a virtual fog machine. And it's 4 just simple questions to start with. I would ask first, what does my audience feel before they need me? The second is, when I have something, or when have I felt something similar? The third is, what changed because of that experience? Then the last one is, what's the one sentence I want the listener to believe after hearing it? But Kyle, I know that's a pretty maybe simplified way to look at it, but what would you add to that to help, that story move from a performance to become a bridge?
I actually love that. I think that's really like, I'm impressed, and I like the simplicity of that and really endorse that. The big thing that I would say, there's a couple of different uses of stories. So like a story at the beginning, like the one we're going to create on our podcast, it's like what you were saying. It's, what is my client feeling? And that leads me. When I figure out what I want to teach somebody, I ask myself, what are the limiting beliefs that are keeping my client from getting the result that I want? And then I build my teaching around that, instead of whatever is the cool thing that I'm doing right now. Or,
Yeah.
And so we're always just, if you can just always be taking it back to, it's even simpler of like, what does my client really need right now? And your client does not need to know more. They need a change in perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think really good coaching and really good like speaking and selling from the stage is actually good coaching. Yeah. A great speaker will be able to know your objections like a chess player 4 moves ahead. And through the stories that he's telling or they're telling and how they're teaching, they will open up new possibilities. Most speakers just teach how to do something, and they overwhelm people and leave you feeling the exact opposite experience.
That's great. That's a great point. Well, Kyle, you know how we end here after all of this, and especially that myth that your story is simply what happened. I have to ask, is anything real?
No. It's all a story. It is entirely like your choice. I wish I like believed it more. I wish I could like fully lean into it, but it's so clear that this is just my brain, and the story that I am telling.
That's great. I mean, what feels real to me here is that recognition, right? The moment when someone hears a story and their body knows before their brain finishes the sentence that that's me. That's the signal. I see that as what's real. But Kyle, where can folks find you, the Story Engine, and your broader work?
Yeah, thestoryengine.co. You can also check out the Story Engine podcast, which we'll be having you on in just a few minutes after this. I'm interviewing experts and leaders from all kinds of walks of life and helping them create powerful, stage-ready stories every single week on the podcast. So I highly recommend checking that out. And if you are interested in building a talk and making more money with your business with stories, please reach out, whether to be a guest or a client. There's lots of ways that I work with people to help them make a ton more money. Other than that, I have a few books called, the biggest one is called The Story Engine, and that's how people can read there. Anyway, perfect. That's what I've got for today.
And we'll, of course, link to those in the show notes below. But for the listener, I would recommend, stop making your story carry every fact from your life. Your story is not the archive. It's actually the bridge.
Or your resume. It's not a resume.
Yeah. Well, it's about asking what your audience feels, right? Find the moment in your journey where you felt it too, extract that meaning. Maybe it's say less even, and just land more. And if this hits, send it to the expert in your life who explains beautifully for 12 minutes and somehow makes everyone less sure what they're actually doing. We have to help them find this thread. And if you're navigating a leadership transition, there's also a 20-minute foundation call with me linked in the show notes below. But Kyle, thank you for the story mirror and the reminder that simple is not necessarily small.
And it's your responsibility. Even though you're smart and you're really good at what you do, if you're not able to communicate to the people who need you, then you're not actually as competent in your skills as you need to be. And it's up to you, because I believe right now more than ever that we really do need experts like you, listener, doing your best and making your most impact. And it's your ability to communicate that vision and that impact and enroll people. We need people at their very best right now to usher in this new future that I think is going to be prosperous and abundant. But that means you need to be telling your story and selling more of your products and services. There are people that need you out there. So go get them.
That's beautiful. Well, until next time, stay grounded, stay human, and keep questioning the noise.